Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dose. I'm Michelle Harrell, your host, and today it is a great pleasure to have Alex Abraham on the show. Alex, let me just start with a little trigger warning for anyone listening. Today's episode is going to be a discussion about some sexual trauma, and so I just want to warn anybody out there who may be triggered by this conversation that is what we'll be talking about today. So please bear with us. It'll be a tough conversation. But I came across Alex's story because he actually wrote a book about his experience and his history called Trauma and Ecstasy, which I highly recommend. I don't know, for those of you on YouTube, can't really get it in vision. But we'll include all of the notes, all of the information in the notes. But Alex, welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you came to write this book?
Sure. So thanks so much for having me, Michelle. I'm really honored to be here. But in terms of the book, I guess my story would probably start when I was 23 years old. I was riding a bike in the Netherlands, and when I got off the bike, I sort of felt a twinge in my pelvic region. Definitely not a place you want to be feeling that kind of that muscle tension and kind of almost like a clinch feeling. And at that point, I started going to see all sorts of doctors and physical therapists and acupuncturists in the months and years to come, because this clinching actually was just getting worse. And I felt sort of tighter and tighter down there. And I really just did not know what to do. And it was hurting my ability to go to the bathroom. It was hurting my ability to, frankly, get a normal erection. And I really was just struggling with this muscle tension. And so I saw all sorts of urologists, and they were not very helpful, and sort of were all like, what do you think is wrong with you? I saw a bunch of physical therapists with the idea that kind of trying to relax those muscles could help them let go and kind of release. And that really was not working. I saw a bunch of acupuncturists with sort of a similar idea, and that wasn't going very well. I tried to meditate. I tried to go in the sauna. I tried to swim. I tried to go on vacation. And
you tried everything. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really hurting my ability to sleep as well, because I kept having to wake up to go to the bathroom. And just really, I felt like I had to go to the bathroom all the time. And it was just really very miserable. And kind of the worst moment was I actually had this little contraption here. The idea is basically that, you would kind of use that as almost like a back scratcher like device to insert down there, with the idea being that you could try to relax the muscles yourself. That also, again, did not work. So about 4 years into my journey, I literally moved across the country to New York City to get help for this condition. That was not working. I had a doctor involuntarily discharge me because he's basically like, I don't know how to help you. And so I was really desperate and sort of at the end of my wits here. And then I had heard of MDMA assisted psychotherapy as almost as a lark. Tim Ferriss had talked about it on a podcast. Eventually, I got kind of desperate enough to maybe try it for my anxiety that I was experiencing at the time. I actually didn't make the connection at all to the physical symptoms I was having at that moment. But I tried MDMA-assisted psychotherapy, and it became pretty clear pretty quickly that, unfortunately, I'd been badly sexually abused by a teacher when I was quite young and repressed the abuse. And that was sort of the genesis or kind of root cause of all the pelvic floor problems I had been experiencing.
Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, that was a lot. So I just want to pause there for a second, because just as with so many emotional, any kind of emotional trauma, emotional anxiety, that kind of thing, it often does manifest in our bodies, right? Physically. And I think your story, that's what was so fascinating to me about your story. Number one, you are very vulnerable and raw in your writing of your story, which is, sometimes tough to read, but also I think so important, because you just don't hold any punches. You just kind of put it all out there, which I think can be very helpful for those who might have a similar story, and they might find some inspiration through your story. So thank you for sharing. But really, like, for you, it was the physical stuff that really first, alerted you, right? You had this regressed memory, and didn't even make the connection to the physical aspects until much later. Is that right? After going through some psychedelic experiences. Is
Yeah,
that right?
I truly had no idea I had been sexually abused. It never even occurred to me. It wasn't something that I didn't grow up in like a hard scrabble background, to be honest. I grew up pretty well off,
Mm-hmm.
in upper class America. So the idea that I could have been badly sexually abused really just didn't compute. I didn't grow up with parents that hate me or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that, or extended family members that did that to me. So the idea that this could happen to me really just didn't occur to me. But it came back in a big way on psychedelics, and that really shook my world for a loop. And that's when I really started to work through everything that happened to me, but also sort of healing from that through psychedelic therapy, energy work,
Mm-hmm.
EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and a variety of other modalities to sort of get to the bottom of this and sort of help me live a better life.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a man, but I can imagine as a man, when things aren't working down there, that is very top of mind. I mean, it felt very like all consuming from your story, the way I read it. Like for several years, this just consumed your life, right? And it impacted every aspect of your life because of the not knowing of what was wrong and how to fix it would make you go a little bit crazy, right?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
really struggling. I had a lot of
Yeah.
anxiety. I was not a very happy person. I had a lot of anger.
Yeah.
Really, my life kind of sucked. So I think that's what kind of drew me to psychedelics to begin with, because I
Mhm.
do think in a lot of cases, not every case, but in a lot of cases, people are unhappy, and they're sort of looking for that root cause, that root
Mhm.
sort of, trying to go deeper, so to speak. And I think psychedelics can really do that and kind of show you those kind of issues in a deep way that maybe traditional therapy kind of struggles
Mhm.
with, in terms of what is driving my anxiety, what is driving my depression, why am I not happier, what is going on that is leading to these issues in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and just like a lot of people, you got a little bit more than you bargained for, I think, right?
Absolutely.
We're often a little naive when we first encounter psychedelics. I myself was a little naive in the first few times I tried psilocybin. So maybe can you share a little bit about how that first experience unfolded for you with MDMA and why that was so helpful for you in making that initial um, well, first of all, in triggering your memory of this event, of these events, right? And then also how that kind of helped you to start to unpack things and what you did thereafter. So I know you didn't stop with MDMA.
Sure. So yeah, I guess I'll pick up in the fourth session, because that's how many sessions it took for me to acknowledge I had been abused. My facilitator at the time asked me, like, what do you think? What does your pelvis say happened to you? And then I was very high on MDMA at the time. It just became super clear that I was abused by a
Mm,
teacher, and then it sort of felt like I was being re-abused right then and there,
mm,
in physical ways. I felt like I was being re-traumatized,
mm,
and then all sorts of taste memory, muscle memory came
mm,
back, and then all sorts of memories around him and sort of things he had done to me, and sort of ways I had acted. I guess a friend had told me he had been abused, and I sort of brushed him off.
mm,
Things of that nature all sort of started coming back to me quite quickly, and that definitely really shook me. And my facilitator, had to sort of comfort me and, like, this is gonna be okay. It was a very
mm.
tough day, obviously, and I was in a lot
Yeah.
of shock for a long time afterwards. I really leaned on my mom, who came to visit me quite quickly after that, and then some friends, and my facilitator and my whole therapeutic team. But it was a very difficult time for me, and a lot of stuff came up. And then, frankly, for the next year or two, things kept coming up, both
Mhm,
on MDMA and psilocybin. A little bit more repressed memories, but also just a lot of feelings around how bad this was.
mhm.
A lot of emotions, a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of sort of you know, just depression,
Sure.
and all that just sort of popping up to the surface. And it's sort of, I began relitigating my whole life. But I think it's sort of like a Pandora's box, psychedelics.
Mhm.
And I think at the beginning, it can be very eye opening for people.
Yeah, it can be very destabilizing in the beginning. I often advise clients that, it often gets worse before it gets better, especially if there's real trauma in your past. Um, because and that's one thing I really appreciated about your story is you did such a good job of really just so conveying exactly kind of how it feels when you're unpacking these things for yourself. And because I can, the other thing I often tell clients is a big part of this process of doing, psilocybin or MDMA or whatever your psychedelic of choice is. A big part of the process is learning to trust ourselves again. I find that many of us, we're not as connected to our inner voice and our instincts as we think we are. And many of us seek approval and self-worth outside of ourselves. And so a big part of this process is learning to really get to know yourself again and trust your own voice. And I can imagine with a regressed memory like that, like, how did you know it was real, right? Like the struggle, because I know you talk about that in the book really, really so eloquently. It's like doubting yourself as well. Is this real? How could I have forgotten something like this? This so traumatic, right? And I imagine there are folks in your circle who probably were questioning, like, is Alex losing his mind? Like he's doing all these psychedelics and now he's, like, was there any of that backlash, or did you feel any of that?
There was honestly not a ton. I think
That's good.
being a guy was sort of helpful in that sense, because this is really not something that guys tend to come up with out of the blue.
True.
I think I had a lot of issues around sex sort of before that, and touch, and sort of anger, and I had several people in my life tell me they were not super surprised.
Oh, okay.
I think maybe surprised to the extent of it, or like what actually happened, but I was not, really functioning at a really high level before that in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
So I think that made it easier to believe.
Gotcha.
And so I think those things together, and I'm a pretty intellectual guy even now. So I was not the type to just be like, I don't know, trying psychedelics for fun.
Right.
That did
Yeah.
not see. So, I was not somebody taking mushrooms in the woods when I was like 17 years old. That was very much not me. So I think all those things together really sort of, and some people knew I'd been having a lot of physical health problems before that. So I think all that together sort of, and, the individual in question, I did go to the police, and I did write a public letter naming him. And, he didn't sue me, and he admitted to driving me home for a period of time. So, I feel quite good about it in terms of belief. So I think I certainly don't have any doubt at this point. And honestly, once it really started coming up in a big way, and there was a lot of taste memory, like I said before, I didn't have much doubt, unfortunately.
No, the details in the book are pretty incredible. So it would be hard to not know that was true, right? So
Yeah.
no, I was just curious because sometimes
Sure.
there is, but you do talk about in the book how you underestimated the amount of time it would take to heal. So even, I think a lot of folks come hoping for very big insights, big shifts, and often those big insights and big shifts for those who do find those during their experience are often harder to integrate afterwards, and I'm curious to hear how that kind of unfolded for you, because I know you mentioned in the book that you thought it was going to just take a few months, but you realized soon that it was going to take years to actually fully heal from this.
Absolutely, Michelle. So I've been working very hard for about 4 years now. I'm coming up on the 4-year anniversary of my first ever kind of medicine session with MDMA in New York City. And I would say I'm still not quite where I want to be, although I'm getting pretty close. I've done a couple sessions with ayahuasca, and I'm still sort of working through those kind of last layers of violation, of sort of negative self-perception of my, I think I made progress on all these things, but I think at this time next year, I feel pretty good that I will be kind of where I want to be, and I will probably take a step back from some of the therapeutic modalities I'm doing at this point. But I'm still actively working on myself in a lot of ways. I still see a shaman energy worker. I still see an intimacy coach. I'm still doing psychedelics every couple months. So I think, it's definitely a long journey. Now, again, I had a lot of trauma. I think most people probably listening to this probably don't have quite the same extent. But I think I do think these things can take a long time, particularly if you really want to go deep and really want to make fundamental, lasting change. I think particularly when you're dealing with childhood sexual abuse, it's very pervasive. I think in terms of how difficult it can be. It's very it's life altering for sure. And so the idea that you would get over, a serial abuse situation in a couple months is probably not realistic. Again, I'm sure there are people who will disagree with me on that, but I do think I saw progress early though. So I don't want to paint too bleak a picture. I do think there was noticeable change pretty early on, but I think I wanted to keep healing. I wanted to keep digging in and moving forward, and that has taken, and I think will continue to take a long time.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the differences you found. I'm curious, because you started with MDMA. I think you also tried ketamine. Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't have a very good experience with ketamine. I did it in a clinic that was sort of more around pain and sort of they mixed it with Ativan, which is a benzo, which is kind of highly addictive and not something I would recommend.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very disorienting and not very healing. So I do think ketamine in the right circumstances with the right people has shown to be, very effective. But the way I did it was not therapeutic. But MDMA and psilocybin and LSD and MDMA combined were all really effective combinations for me in sort of working through my stuff and getting the deeper layers.
Yeah. And can you maybe, for the audience who might be psychedelic naive, talk a little bit about the differences or why and it could be just chance that you happen to hear about MDMA, you found somebody, but why did you start with MDMA, and then how did you know when you needed to move on to something else? Because you do talk about that in the book. I'm curious to hear your answer.
Sure. So MDMA, I think, is the gentlest of all. It's not actually a classic psychedelic, and it's not very disorienting or sort of shape shifting. It's more intellectual, but it really helps you get at trauma, which I think is the first sort of layer to really healing and really working through your stuff, and kind of gives you a better sense for there's a feeling of safety, a feeling of gentleness, because it literally dampens the fear receptor in your brain, the amygdala, and then it also triggers the hippocampus, which sort of brings up memories to the surface. So that combination of bringing up memories in a non-painful way, I think, can really make people feel safe and make them feel like they can talk about things or feel emotions they wouldn't normally talk about. At the same time, that feeling of safety sort of often triggers your body to sort of let go of somatic trauma. I shake a lot on the MDMA, my legs shake, my whole body shakes. And I think that shaking is literally letting go of bad energy that's been stored in your body from trauma and other childhood events that maybe you weren't able to process at the time. The thing about childhood trauma is it's very hard to children often don't know how to handle it, so they kind of suppress it and push it down, and then it sort of stays in your subconscious, and it comes out as anger, it comes out as physical issues like IBS or the other autoimmune problems, or the physical somatic issues I was having around muscle tension. And then it just kind of stays in your body and stores in your body, and MDMA is really good at getting that out. It's really good at kind of letting go of that trauma. So it's a really good place to start. I think where it's not quite as good is it's because it's your friend, it can't sort of almost get to the deeper parts of your psyche as well. It's sort of not as spiritual and not as maybe connective as mushrooms can be. And sort of it's because mushrooms are sort of darker. I think they also can be more healing and especially for depression and sort of things around that. I think mushrooms can be really great too as well. So both of those, I think, were the two biggest compounds I used to sort of let go of trauma and sort of heal from my abuse. Yeah, no,
I think that I myself have done both. And I agree with your descriptions there. I've also had a few clients have real somatic experiences on psilocybin as well, where same thing, body shaking, convulsing for hours, which seems very scary on the outside, but was very cathartic for the client.
Absolutely.
And healing afterwards. So, okay. So, gosh, so many things I want to ask you. It's just such good stuff in here. So can you talk a little bit more about how each session, especially with psilocybin, kind of helped you to uncover, another layer, I call them layers or what have you, of trauma, and also start to face some of the hard stuff around, the anger and the shame and the repressed emotions, especially also around, the feelings you have and the relationships you have with your parents. Because I know with childhood trauma, there's also a lot of anger often that surfaces towards our parents for, why didn't you protect me, or why didn't, and those are heavy subjects. And a lot of us deal with our own grievances with our own parents that are not even as heavy as all that. But I think psilocybin can be such a great tool in helping us to resolve those and find forgiveness, find acceptance, all the things. So do you want to talk a little bit about, because I know you and your mom have done a lot of work, and you and your father as well, and how, psychedelics helped you with that.
Sure. So I had a lot of anger toward my parents, obviously, as you mentioned, and a lot of self-loathing. I think that really started to come out on mushrooms. I was yelling and screaming a lot on mushrooms. I had a lot of, shame that I was sort of working through, and I really did not like myself. And mushrooms can really sort of turn that, because they're a non-specific amplifier. They can really turn those feelings up and make them feel like they're being amplified and kind of bring them to the surface. And so there was a lot of pain there. There was a lot of wanting to die. There was a lot of screaming. And so I think that was very hard to deal with at first,
Yeah.
obviously. That was not fun at all. But I think the only way you can really move through those feelings is to feel them and let them go. And so, having them down the surface doesn't make them go away. They just come out in different ways, snapping at people or sort of, or unconsciously. So I think to make the unconscious conscious, like I think Groff or what Jung said maybe, is I think a really important way to sort of live a better life, and I guess a more purposeful life. Because I think I look at what I was doing before, a lot of the decisions I was making came from trauma and came from unconscious feelings. And so I didn't like myself. So I wasn't treating myself very well. I wasn't eating as well. I wasn't exercising as well at certain points in my life. I wasn't connecting with people very well. And that sort of, now that I'm more conscious of those, it's easier to treat myself better. It's easier to love myself, and it's easier to sort of live a life that feels true to me, and make decisions that feel like they come from my heart and not from, a dissociated place or a traumatized place. And so I think really bringing those feelings up to the surface can sort of help you directionally live a life that's more true to yourself.
100%. And so because I think what you just said, it was hard, it was tough. A lot of folks assume, who don't know much about psychedelics, that people are just tripping. People are coming here to just trip and have a good time. And I'm always, when I get into these kinds of conversations with folks who don't know much about psychedelics, I'm like, hey, trust me, my clients aren't always having a good time. Like, it's a lot of real work that folks are doing for them, on their own growth and on their own healing. And usually the struggle, that you have to go through that struggle. To your point, you have to feel those feelings, which a lot of us go through life trying to not feel our feelings, right? Especially the quote bad feelings that we label bad, right? So we do what we can to distract ourselves, or to numb ourselves, or to compartmentalize those feelings. And psychedelics definitely have a way of bringing to the forefront what you've been trying to avoid, right, for a very long time. So, how can you talk a little bit about how you worked through those? Because, gosh, how many journeys have you done? You've done so many.
I've done it in the 20s.
Yeah, you've lost count.
Mostly MDMA and psilocybin. I've done those both a lot. But I think the most important thing about psychedelic therapy is integration. The session themselves sort of only open the door for change, and kind of working with people, working with yourself, journaling, exercising. Those are all different ways to integrate what came up. Figure out how you want to move through change, how you want to make change, if you want to make change. How to approach these things. And so I think just doing the session and then sort of turning away from what came up for you, I think is what a lot of people have been doing and are doing. And it's unfortunate because I think the deepest work and the deepest healing comes from in between the sessions. So
I
to
agree.
integrate for me, I was doing EMDR for a long time. I'm working with an intimacy coach. I was working with a body worker to sort of try to get more in touch with my body. I was working with an energy worker that I still work with to sort of feel those feelings in a safer way and breathe them out and move through them and sort of move through everything that's come up for me in the session, whether that's anger, whether that's fear, whether that's hurt, and kind of blow it all out, so to speak. So I think all those things are really important for me. I was part of a men's group for a while men who had been sexually abused in the Austin area. And so all those things together, I think, formed an integration practice for me. In addition to trying to eat well, trying to sleep as well as I can, trying to exercise, trying to journal, trying to go to the sauna, trying to get as much time just even outside as possible. And so I think all those things together form an integration practice, and it really helped me sort of move through and kind of I guess change the narrative around myself and how I perceive myself and let go of all that somatic trauma.
Yeah, fantastic. I agree 100%. Integration is where the real work is. Otherwise, it's just an experience, right? It can be just an experience. It maybe open some things for you, but if you're not willing to really do the work after to keep exploring those and moving forward through whatever is troubling you, then yeah, I find the clients who really put the work in get the major transformation, right? But you do have to put work in. It's not a magic pill.
Absolutely.
And so now when feelings come up, if you're quote triggered in day to day, right? Can you talk a little bit about how you are better able to kind of recognize what that is and maybe what the root cause is and breathe through it and work your way through it in real time? Has that changed for you since doing all of this work?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely more in touch with my emotions and sort of where they're coming from. I still find energy work and breath work really helpful in kind of letting go of those feelings and sort of moving through them. But definitely now, I have a better sense of where they're coming from. I have a better sense of what I'm feeling inside that is leading to this anger or this depression. What is the root cause? And I think I just am much better in touch with myself and know myself much better than before I did psychedelics. It doesn't mean that I'm certainly not perfect. There are times I still snap at people or lose my temper or all these things. And I think perfection is certainly not the goal here. And it's not really achievable anyway.
No.
And certainly something that, I live every day like
Yeah,
this.
we're all
So,
still human. Yeah.
yeah.
No, thank you for saying that because I've had clients in the past who, for whatever reason, they think they're quote healed and then something happens. They're like, I don't understand. I thought that I did all this work. And I'm like, well, you're still human and we still have our triggers. We still have our patterns and behaviors. I think the difference is after doing work on yourself and after doing the number of, journeys that you have done, is that you're better able to self-regulate. You're better able to recognize what that is and then self-regulate in a way that is a healthier, approach to life. And I think that's the benefit of doing work with psilocybin or MDMA or any other psychedelic. So
Sure.
thanks for saying that. Cause yeah, we're all human. It's a journey. There's no finish line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're all constantly growing and changing and learning and life still happens. Life still throws us curveballs. Some are good, some are bad. Right. And we have to manage our way through it. I also was really touched in your story. Well, first, before I get to that, I'm curious, have the physical ailments improved as well as you've done the emotional work?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm still working through some physical issues that I'm having.
Yeah.
They definitely have not fully gone away,
Mm-hmm.
but that's certainly one of my hopes for the next year. We'll see how it goes. But
Yeah.
I think that will be last because that was sort of the most fundamental violation that I suffered from. And that was that was the thing that triggered this whole
Yeah.
healing journey to begin with. So I do think that will be a big sign if those ever fully clear up. And I think they will eventually, that I've sort of moved through a lot of this stuff. And it's time to sort of take a step back from my therapeutic journey. Now,
Yeah.
I was never finished, but I'm also not going to go to therapy forever.
Right. Yeah.
So, I think there does come a time where I take a step back, but that point is not yet, although my physical symptoms have much improved.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah. And again, I think our bodies are our allies in this, right? Our bodies are our allies if we pay attention, because they often do give us clues to emotional distress before we even are conscious of it.
Sure.
And I think in your situation, that was very apparent.
Absolutely.
So I also know that you talk about in your book a lot about a sort of a spiritual awakening that you've had as well. And I myself have had that during my own psilocybin experiences. And so I'm curious if you're open to talking about that, what that is for you, and how you feel like that has impacted your life in a positive way, and where you're at on that journey right now.
Sure. So I think it's different for everyone. So I'm sort of, particularly in this issue, I'm very hesitant to have a prescription. But
Yeah.
that being said, I do think believing in something bigger than yourself has proven to be a big part of my healing journey and the healing journey of many others. And feeling that sense of connection, that sense of maybe love and sort of deeper, I guess, just something beyond just you, because I think that over focus on yourself can lead to a lot of ruminating and depression and anxiety. And I think the one thing that psychedelics do really well is they sort of are expansive in the sense that you can see beyond sort of your typical programming and your ego, and sort of see a more spiritual connection. So I think having a sense of spirituality and having a sense of a deeper purpose and meaning has been really vital in my life. I'm still not very religious. Some people go that direction, and I think that's great too. But definitely, I think spirituality is a big part of healing, which is something I didn't believe when I started my journey. And I do think working through trauma is the first step. And it's sort of hard to get to that spiritual layer if you haven't worked through a lot of your trauma first. And so I really was not getting there. But at this point, I'm closer. I still don't feel fully spiritual. And I think that will continue in the next year as well, working with ayahuasca and other medicines. But, I think I'm getting there. And so that's been a big part for me. But I do think it's different for everyone. There's no one size fits all model for spirituality in particular. And, whether that's Buddhism or Christianity or Hinduism, whatever the case may be, or the Taoism, I don't know. But I do think some sort of spiritual practice or ideas is a really good thing.
Yeah. Just having something, to your point, bigger than yourself, right? Believing in something bigger than yourself. I think for a lot of folks coming out of a psilocybin experience specifically, I hear, a lot of people describe feeling just very connected to other humans, other creatures, plants, right? Just feeling more connected and recognizing that we all are part of something much bigger. And that can be very humbling, can feel very scary also, but it can also be very freeing depending on how you look at it. And knowing that, we're actually not in control, that there's a bigger force out there that is beyond our control.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, that I agree that is a huge tool in the healing process for many, and that it is a very personal relationship. Again, it's about coming back to yourself and coming back to what makes you tick and what really resonates for you as an individual, and not seeking what others tell you you should be doing or should be feeling, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So, well, Alex, what else, is there anything else you would like to share with our audience regarding, your journey and why you believe so much in these medicines to help folks deal with trauma, whether that's sexual trauma or any other kind of trauma? I obviously am a firm believer that they can be great tools in helping people unpack things for themselves and heal. But anything else you would like to say specifically about that for our audience?
I do think real healing is possible, especially with these tools, because they are very strong. I did not believe real healing was possible before. There are still occasions where I don't feel as healed, but in general, I feel in a much better place. And I would really attest that to psychedelic therapy and the work I've done around it. And so I do think, getting to a better place really can work. It can happen. And, again, some people get there without psychedelics, but I do think for a lot of people, trauma is very, it makes your brain and sort of your ego less malleable. And I think getting that malleability back through medicine can be really good. Again, it can be destabilizing, and I think it's important to have it done in a therapeutic way with the right people and the right setting and the right mindset. But I do think in certain contexts, it can be really transformational. And so that would be something I would impart to anyone who thinks, this isn't for me, or I can't do this, or this is not. Again, everyone needs to come to the conclusion, or everyone should come to the conclusion if they want to try psychedelics themselves.
Sure.
My hope is they wouldn't listen to me or anybody else, and it needs to come from inside you. But my message would be that true healing was possible for me in a way I didn't believe before.
Yeah. No, amen to that. Yeah. So, well, thank you for sharing your story today. I definitely, for anyone out there interested, again, Alex's book is Trauma and Ecstasy: How Psychedelics Made My Life Worth Living. It's a heavy read. It's pretty, as a mom myself, it was difficult to read certain parts, knowing, I have my own kids. Imagining a child going through that is tough. But I was just so inspired by your story, and I knew I wanted to have you on the podcast immediately. So thank you for being willing to share your story, because it's my belief that through our storytelling and our own testimonies of healing and coming to these medicines, that we're going to help educate and spread the word for folks who are out there looking for something. And again, you tried all kinds of traditional methods before turning to these, right? And you weren't finding what you were needing. And so I think that's really important to mention again, is that you had tried all kinds of traditional methods and we're still feeling quite stuck and feeling quite lost. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% correct.
Yeah.
And I still feel a little lost sometimes, but much less than before.
We all do. I mean, I think like I said, it's an ongoing journey. It's never, we take it day by day. But I think what psychedelics help us do is really, again, get back in touch with that voice inside. If you find some kind of faith through this process, I think that can be a huge, benefit in how you move forward and how you continue to, do life and do it well and thrive and feel your feelings the way that we all need to do that more these days.
Sure.
All right. Well, Alex, thank you so much. I enjoyed getting to know you, and thank you for sharing your story. And we will be sure to post all the details in the notes for anyone who's interested in finding Alex. Do you want to maybe mention your Instagram handle or your LinkedIn, or where can people find you?
Sure. Alex.l.abraham on Instagram and alex@traumaandecstasy.com on email. So I'm pretty easy to reach. I respond pretty quickly usually, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Alex. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Beyond the Dose. And I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.